Hi, welcome to Maverick Mindcast. My guest today is, I guess I'd call you a conspiracy researcher, esoteric author, Wayne McCroy. Welcome, Wayne. Thanks for
Hi,
joining
thanks
us.
for having me on the show.
Oh,
Yeah,
it's a pleasure to have you.
yeah. I like to tell people I accidentally became an expert in occult philosophy. So that's one of my fortes that I study, and I didn't get down that rabbit hole on purpose either. So that's why I tell people it was kind of an accidental thing. But when you explore any of these conspiracy type topics down to their roots, you always run into one of two things. Okay, you either run into the occult, right? And this traces back to what's called the ancient mystery schools back in antiquity, which are kind of brought forward today through the different various secret society groups. So that's
Not to interrupt you, but that you hit exactly on my first question.
okay.
Was how can you define how the mystery schools later morphed into the secret society? So if you're I want to let you continue, but that was a question I had.
Okay, yeah, we'll get to the questions, and they're all good questions, I'm sure. But essentially, the two places you wind up when you invariably study any of these quote unquote conspiracy theory type topics is you'll end up either back with occultism, tied back to the ancient mystery schools when you explore it all the way to its roots in the past, or the other end you'll end up on will be when you look forward into the future, you find the end game of all of this is the transhumanist philosophy. And that's where you will find all these dots connect and everything leads to these same two places. So you have your beginnings in the ancient mystery schools and your future, or the end game here, so to say, of all of this with the transhumanist philosophy and the transhumanist singularity. So that's kind of how I got to where I was. I started out actually first studying the UFO topic. And it's just astounding where all of those different research bits take you. Like it takes you down these different trails you wouldn't expect. And then I later, through personal things that have happened through the years to myself and others around me, I started exploring more of the biomedical field and a lot of these different paths as far as that goes, and looking more into the secret society groups and things like that. So I wound up with a pretty diverse knowledge of a lot of these different concepts, and was able to put them together in different ways in book form. And also I do podcasting as well. I have my own podcast. It's out there on Apple Podcasts and Spotify for people if they're interested. It's called Alchemical Tech Revolution, and that's also the name of my first book I wrote too. So people could check that out. And I am also there it is. Yeah, you have it. There you go. So that one's kind of a primer of all these different topics and how they interrelate.
Yeah,
So
recommended enough. Oh, just one other funny thing. I ordered this off Amazon and it mysteriously got lost the first time. I was
amazing.
like, why isn't it coming? Why isn't it coming? And it even said, I'm in Florida. It said it was in Orlando, which I'm not in Orlando, but it's not that far. Never came. I actually had to reorder it.
Wow. Sorry to hear that. I hope they refunded you for it. They
Oh
should have.
yeah, they did,
Okay.
but it was just kind of weird. I was like, of all the books, I've never had that happen before.
Maybe somebody stole it.
That
used to happen to Bill
They read
Cooper.
it.
It used to happen to Bill Cooper back in the day when he wrote Behold a Pale Horse. That book got stolen
Really?
off of the store shelves all the time, and out of the mail and everything. So yeah, so I don't know. Maybe that's what happened. Maybe not. Maybe it just got lost. I mean, things do get lost, unfortunately. Could be a coincidence, but we know how they are with the whole coincidence idea with everything. But was there anywhere in particular you wanted to begin here as far as looking at different aspects of this whole thing?
Sure. Well, I just wanted to let the audience know that your new book, The Demic of Pan, Breaking the Natural Order, is kind of what I want to talk about since it's your newest book and there's just chock full of information. I do feel like the foundational aspect of it is the archetypes,
Right.
how they're being used to craft a new mythology. So if you can just share a little bit about what archetypes are. A lot of people don't know what that means. And then kind of how they influence us subconsciously.
Okay, the idea of the archetype. Now, this goes back a lot further than people think. The one that really popularized this idea in the early 20th century was Carl Jung, right? People may have heard of him, the psychologist guy. He popularized the idea of the archetype and what he calls the collective unconscious. But these ideas are far older than Carl Jung. See, most people don't know this, but Carl Jung was an alchemist, and he practiced a lot of these different esoteric type sciences. So he understood some of these foundational principles and tried to put them into more modern terms, more modern parlance. And thus he used the term archetype to describe some of these things. And what exactly this is this relates back to, it's kind of an inherent genetic memory that we all have. It's something that hits on the unconscious mind, that registers in the unconscious mind and affects you on a subconscious level, although you're not consciously aware of it. So these different types of archetypes can affect you. They can affect your psyche in different ways without you even realizing on a conscious level that they're doing so. And a lot of this relates back to symbolism, symbology, things like this. Some of these different archetypal concepts. These are largely what many of the stories of mythology are based upon, are these archetypal ideas. These are inherent natural energies out there in the natural realm that we inherently understand through what they term, there's various different terms for this, okay? In the occult circles, they call some of this the Akashic Record, that kind of a concept. When you look at it from the more modern day scientific viewpoint, they call it genetic memory or epigenetic memory. There's various other things that go along with it. There's various other descriptions of it. Some of the shamanic type traditions would call it like ancestral memories, ancestral spirits, this kind of stuff. But there's certain ideas that we recognize, right? It's inherent in our human nature. When we see something, we have this guttural type primal reaction to it. That doesn't always affect us on a conscious level, but we recognize it. So there's a lot of different symbols that are used in this way to invoke different feelings, right? Emotions, stir up certain emotions and different types of energies like this within the person. And this is primarily what an archetype is. I don't really have a much better description of that, but it's an idea, it's a concept that you will recognize. It's a pattern, you see, that you recognize in some type of a symbol, but you don't recognize it on the conscious waking level, but your unconscious mind recognizes it, and it does affect you in a subconscious way. So that will eventually alter your behavior in some way, shape, or form. And there are people in positions of power in this world that understand this, because make no mistake about it, people in the higher echelons of the control structure in this world are very much involved in the occult. They understand a lot of these occult concepts and they leverage them against the masses. So that's kind of the vantage point I come from with the archetype, because they've learned how to use these subjective ideas to influence people's behaviors. And this has to do a lot with what you would call mass psychology as well. So, they could steer whole people groups with different ideas by invoking these different archetypes. And I could go ahead and cite this type of archetype with the whole thing that happened on 9/11, right? You have your twin towers. That's an archetype. I mean, all you have to do is look at the tarot card, the tower card, and you could kind of understand this concept. So you have these towers falling. It's invoking fear. It invokes this primal fear by using this type of an archetype, the twin pillars, twin towers. This goes back into Masonic symbolism and stuff as well. This represents what the Freemasons call Joaquin and Boaz, okay, the two pillars of foundation. So this is something that your unconscious mind will recognize as an archetypal symbol, right? You may not be consciously aware of it, and you may not have ever learned anything about any of this stuff, but it'll still affect you on an emotional level, on a subconscious level. And that's why they use a lot of these things to amplify the emotional state of people in many ways. And this would be hitting on the primary emotion of fear. And that's one of the primary ones that they use for control. So it kind of incorporates a control mechanism into your mind. Okay. And a lot of this really ties back to the question of what exactly is consciousness. So many of these people in these occult orders, these secret society groups in the highest, most echelons of them, understand a little bit more about this stuff than your average person, and are able to leverage these different types of archetypes against people in different ways to invoke a certain reaction. And this could be kind of equated to a control mechanism that's called Hegelian dialectic. I don't know if anybody out there is familiar with that term. Essentially, there's people that describe it very simply as it's called problem, reaction, solution. So they create a problem, they put that out there for the masses to affect the mass psychology. There's this problem to invoke a specific reaction from the public, and they 99.9% of the time they get the reaction they want from them. And then they introduce the solution to the problem, which invariably takes away more and more of your rights and more and more of your freedoms. So that's one of the ploys that they use, effectuating these different types of archetypes in that way for social control. And this is a science called social engineering, and it's going on all throughout our society today, and it's been heavily done, and we've seen the echoes of this the past 2 years in a very real way. So if anybody doubts what I'm saying here about that, I mean, all you got to do is open your eyes and look around and see what's been done to the people in the name of fearing this invisible thing that you have no way to know whether it's really there or not. Even to the point where they've convinced people they could be sick without really being sick. So that should tell you something right there. They're invoking a different type of an archetypal thing to create this behavior in people. But I guess that's, I've kind of rambled on a long time there with the description of what the archetype is. But for people who are unaware, the archetype is something that could be that your mind will unconsciously recognize, subconsciously react to, that you won't be in your field of conscious awareness. So it will affect your behavior in some way, shape, or form. And there are people that use this method for control. And that's the bottom line here.
Okay. And what about etymological tactics, like word origins, things like that? Do you have any examples of that? Or can you talk a little bit about that, where it's not just imagery, it's also kind of words that they use? And
Right. Yeah, I could definitely talk on that. When you look at the roots of where words come from, this is a very important concept as well. The etymology of words, because words have meaning and sometimes they have hidden nuance that our modern language is unaware of. We use them differently than we once did in many respects. So when you see some of these type words, oftentimes they will be invoking an archetype within the word that you're unaware of. Like if you look back at what does corona mean? Well, corona, back in the original parlance and language that it was used in, the original word origin means crown or array of the sun, and it always equates to royalty and the sun. So this is an archetype of authority, right? So this is one way where they've leveraged an archetype based upon words and symbols, and this is both in the word, the spoken word, and the symbol here, because words actually are symbols. But you see how this one word or this one concept or image has been leveraged in a way to inspire fear in people and to kind of give them this air of authority with this. So that's why they invoked corona with the coronavirus at the crown. So, thus applying the idea, and it's a concept, and it might be hard for some people to bridge the gap here to understand, but it's a concept that, like I said, your unconscious mind will recognize. Okay, corona, that's relating to the crown, that's relating to the rays of the sun, which all this has esoteric ties back to the ancient mystery school and all those different teachings there as well. But it invokes this aura of authority. So when they're talking to you about coronavirus, right, and they're using this, it invokes a type of authority. So it will inspire your unconscious mind to create this subconscious type of a, how should I say, unction to follow whatever directions that they give to you in regards to this thing, because that's the archetype they're invoking there. And it's a very subjective thing, right? And like I said, if you look at it from a strictly conscious viewpoint, you might be thinking, okay, well, that's nonsense, right? I wouldn't even know what, I think of Corona, it's beer, right? The Corona is beer. So most people wouldn't bridge that gap or think in that way. It's a different way of thinking, but this is the way that these dark occultists that run this place think, right? And that's the important concept. So whether you believe any of this stuff or not is immaterial. There are people in positions of power in this world that very much believe in these concepts and use them. And the things they do to use them will affect all of us. So it's important that you understand where it is they're coming from, what they believe with this, and how they utilize it in different ways against you. And this is just one example of how they've done this. They've taken the word corona, issued it into coronavirus, which coronaviruses have existed for a long time and shouldn't really be that fear inspiring, right? Because generally they're equated to the common cold. Well, they upped their game a little with it, didn't they? They really invoked this archetype, and they played it hard with the people, and they pushed this different type of fear along with this whole thing and created a new narrative. And that's essentially what they do by leveraging these archetypes. They're attempting to craft a new narrative. And narrative is a very important term, and it's one that they actually have been using as of late. If you go to the World Economic Forum and look at some of their activity as of late, most people are familiar with the idea of what they call the Great Reset, right? Well, now they've kind of shifted their focus and they call it the Great Narrative. Mm-hmm. Well, so it's very important to listen to the nuance of the words that they use. There's a kind of inference in the word narrative, okay? And usually narrative will imply some type of a fictitious type of a nuance to it, or a fictitious type of an inference, right? So that's why when they use narrative, well, it makes your mind say, hold on a second, time out. Narrative, what do they mean by that? Are they talking about just a description of something, or are they crafting a story? And this is their way of showing their hand, in a sense. They're crafting a story for you to follow. They're letting you know in no uncertain terms, hey, we're making up this new fiction for you to follow. It would be in your best interest to follow along, and it would be in our best interest for you to follow along. So that's kind of how they do things. And I know it sounds like kind of strange to some people to say that, but they choose the wording of the things they say and these different concepts they use very carefully. And there's a reason for that, because there's also a karmic principle that comes into play with a lot of it too. So that's the thing. I mean, it's a lot to unpack, and there's a lot of different occultic type ideas that underlie all of this stuff. And it's a different way of thinking for most people. So that's why sometimes it may sound a little convoluted or hard to describe here. But when you get to the core of what goes on, how these people who run things in this world operate, they use different karmic energies, okay? And people are familiar with the term karma. And one of the things that they have to do, which is an absolute natural law principle, is they have to tell you what they're doing. Because they need your consent. They need your tacit consent to do anything to you in this place. And this is a very important occult principle that most people don't understand, or has escaped most people. So in order to do something to you, or put a situation in place that affects you, they have to tell you up front what it is they're doing. And they do this through a means called predictive programming, right? We see this out in the entertainment field all the time. They'll show you in movies and stuff, things that they have planned for the future. And then when you actually see it in real life and recognize it, well, then it's already been, the idea has been kind of engrafted into your mind from the beginning, and your disregard for it, or your complacency to it, they take that as your tacit consent for the approval of that. So if you don't object to something that they show you in entertainment form, they take that as your tacit consent to have that done, or have that become a reality. And in so doing, they kind of skirt around this karmic principle that guides them so much. So, it's kind of a convoluted way to think, but I assure you that's how they do things. They'll show you it in entertainment form first, or in some strange ways like that. And then, they could just come out and claim, well, we've showed you that this is a possibility and you didn't object to that possibility. So that's your consent, and that's how they view your consent. It's a principle I call metaphysical consent, because I don't really know a better term for it. But that's kind of how they do things. And that's why they leverage a lot of these different archetypal type principles and stuff like that against us as well. They show us in no uncertain terms something that you'll recognize on an unconscious level, or even on a conscious level in many regards now, when you're talking about the entertainment form of it. This, among different initiates of these secret orders, is called revelation of the method. So they reveal to you what they're planning, what they're doing, and they do this for the different karmic reasons that we discussed here. So there's a lot to unpack here, like I said, and I'm sorry if it sounds like I'm rambling and going on side trails,
No,
but
not at all.
but
No,
yeah.
like for instance, you have Event 201, you have movies like V for Vendetta. I mean, if you just watch that movie, it's like, people, come on, you can't say, oh, well, that's just it's so revealing. But at the same time, I think you had said indifference equals
Right.
passive
Indifference.
consent. And that's what I'm seeing happening en masse, right now.
Mhm.
And I feel like the culprits that are allowing this have been all the technology they're introducing, which is just literally just hijacking the minds of people. I see people out in the wild in reality, and it's just, they'll do anything to keep their eyes on their phone, even with their children. Here, candy, toy, go, just here, you take a device, so I can look at my device. And I just feel like that's the big difference between, talking about it, showing your hand and doing it and getting away with it. It's previously, we didn't have all these distractions. Now you have, Elon Musk buys Twitter, and it's just like one thing after the other, and people focus on, say, Johnny Depp and Amber Heard over Ghislaine Maxwell. It's like, you really, like, it's just amazing to me what people focus on these days and what they want access to. It's not about anything that will affect their own lives. It's about these ridiculously trivial things, and I think one of the big things they push is this hero complex, which is really dangerous, right? I'm just noticing that everywhere, left, right, center, everyone has this like hero complex of, somebody's going to swoop in, and like Elon now, Musk is going to save us. Or, my other question to you is, I just think it's so interesting, because when I look back now on like Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter, like all these movies, and the David and Goliath, which you mentioned in your book, the little guy always wins, though. So is that just a way of pacifying people into not, we don't have to worry, because, the good always conquers evil? Like, because if they're showing their hand, it's very rare you'll see a Marvel movie, or you'll see any of these big movies that, if you really look at them, they push so much of what's going on right now. It's actually ridiculous, of what, the tyranny and the control, and, the reason behind it, the occult type details, but they never win in the end. So is that, like, what's your take on that?
Well, there's several different layers to that to unpack. The first one is this. Okay, if you're convinced, that the little guy is going to win in the end, right? Or somebody's going to step up and save you from this, what does that create? That creates complacency, indifference, right?
Yeah.
So that's part of the social engineering trope that goes on with this whole thing. The other concept here is, and this is an important one, this was pointed out by Joseph Campbell in some of his writings and stuff like that. It's the hero's journey concept. Okay, and a lot of this is influential in the entertainment, right? Because in order to create an effective story that people will want to watch and follow along with and really be vested in, it has to have some very critical factors within the story. And Joseph Campbell laid out 12 different steps in the hero's journey. And it doesn't necessarily have to have all of those steps, but for these stories to effectively keep people's attention and capture their minds, it has to have some of these different concepts in there. So that's one of the reasons as well, because you want to have this hero, right? You want to have this model to follow, this archetype, so to say. It's a hero archetype, and that's one of the archetypes here. So when you have this hero going on this journey, it kind of we could all relate to it in a certain way on an inner level, because it's something that's shared by all human beings, right? We all have these common experiences, and we all have some of these common themes that link us all together. So these are things that you could recognize in a person. So this makes it a type of archetype. And this is one of the other ways where they leverage things as well with a lot of these stories. And a perfect example of, the hero's journey, if people are interested in looking at that, would be the original Star Wars film that came out in 1977. It lays out every single step of the 12 in the hero's journey. And when Lucas put it out, he made sure that he hit upon all these concepts from Joseph Campbell with the hero's journey, because it makes a compelling story, and it makes it something that people want to see and follow along with, something they could relate to. And that's kind of what we need. People need something that they could relate to, and that kind of a thing along with this. And I don't think like all the storytelling motifs that go on are necessarily geared for controlling people, so to say, or steering them in a certain direction, but they do get leveraged by these people in positions of power in that way. So it's not to say every single production or something that comes out is a social programming event, but they do get leveraged in that way with some of the concepts. So that's kind of what happens with many of these different stories, even though they do portray some good aspects and stuff to them. Much of what we see coming out of Hollywood in recent years, though, it kind of throws aside that whole hero conception, doesn't it? It's all about the anti-hero now, or the villain. You see how the villains a lot of times get glorified these days. It's a shift in the thinking, and that's what's been going on the past couple decades here now. It's a shift in the way that we think. So we're not necessarily seeking to identify with this hero figure. Instead, they're giving us this other figure to identify with, the anti-hero, so to say. Or there's very many different tropes that they use for this idea, but they're all designed to create indifference, right? Indifference or complacency on our part, because they want to keep you confused, okay? Because there's a lot of profit in confusion. This they know, and this they work with. So if they keep you confused, you're easier to control. And don't we see that being the case of things that have happened in our reality here the past couple of years? They keep everybody purposely confused about things. One day they'll tell them one thing, and then the next day they'll tell them the complete opposite is true. So what do? You don't know, right? So your average person would not be able to take in this kind of information, this contradictory information, and utilize it in a proper way. So what happens is the mind shuts down, and then you just listen to what you're told, right? You listen to the authority figure. That's what it's about here. So they try to convince people to listen to an authority figure, which may or may not be an actual authority on a subject. That's another topic altogether. Like they'll put a front man out there and say, this is the expert, listen to the expert. Do you see his nice white lab coat? He knows what he's talking about. He's got a degree. Look at that paper on the wall back there he has. You don't have that. You should listen to him rather than do your own research. You can't trust anything that you find on the internet. And haven't we seen that going on the past 2 years?
Or he has a pink sweater. He doesn't have a degree in anything, but he has a pink sweater. I mean,
but he's rich. He's rich. Right? Listen to the rich guy, right? The rich guy whose father was head of Planned Parenthood, the proven and known eugenicist who actually said in a public speech that if we do a really great job with vaccines, we could reduce the population by about 30%. So but
he wants to save your life, Wayne.
I know, right? These guys are our best buds, right? Like Elon Musk, he really cares about free speech, right? The same guy that wants to put a brain implant in your head and hook it up to his Starlink satellites. He really cares about you being able to speak your mind, right?
Absolutely.
I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I don't know why people can't see through that cult of personality with a lot of that.
Hey, the important thing is Alex Jones got his Twitter account back. Okay. Clearly it's all upward from there, you know?
Yeah.
It's so funny
I'll
because there's
tell
so
you.
much of the alternative media is just like a life preserver clinging to that. And I
Yeah.
say, well, I don't have a Twitter account. Does that mean I'm doomed to like eternal hell or something? Like,
I
because
don't
this
have a Twitter
apparently was
account
the
either.
salvation for everyone. That's, you know, even in the alternative media, it's being, you know, just pushed out as everything's going to be okay now because, you know, Twitter's owned by somebody else who's going to restore certain accounts. And it's like, well, I don't have a Twitter account. So does that mean I'm going to be left out of this new utopia that we're being ushered into? It's
Oh, that's the other thing. I mean, they play all sides of the field. That's the point here. The people in control, they're very clever about how they do things,
course.
and they control the narrative across all different angles. So even those people you see in the alternative media, like especially the bigger name ones, well, of course, they're going to jump on this and say, oh, this is great and this and that, when it's all contrived from the get-go. I mean, it's all about the same thing. It's all about bringing together and consolidating these different platforms all under one umbrella, right? So that's what's been going on, and we've seen this happening through the past several decades, where all the media, about 95% of all media, is owned by no more than 6 companies. Six
That's probably too
companies.
generous to
And
say.
yeah, that's probably too generous because they've done so many mergers and stuff like that. It may actually be 1 or 2 at this point. And here's the thing: all the steering committees and stuff of these companies that own all the media, they're all interlocked in the inner circles of some of these various secret society groups. So that being the case, they have controlling shares going across the board in all of this stuff. And when you actually look at news media in particular, you have to realize where the news media comes from. And a lot of people aren't very savvy as to how this actually happens, right? If you look at your local newscast, right, just turn on your local ABC station or whatever, they'll come out, they have a certain format they follow. Here's your top stories. Well, do you know where they get all those top stories from? Usually it's what's called a news wire service, right? That puts out these stories. So they give them this already pre-written, pre-canned story from one of these news wire services. Here you go. This is the top news today. Read from the script. And you could actually see examples of this. Go on YouTube and look at all the examples of all these local newscasts that are repeating verbatim, word for word, the
They
same
show them
stories.
all at the same time, and they're all
Yep.
saying the same thing.
They're all saying the same thing. Like, this is proof positive of the concept there. This is a known commodity. It's called a newswire service. There's very few of them, and they're the ones that put out the news and control the narrative that goes out. So that puts a whole lot of power in the hands of a very few people, doesn't it? When you work for AP Newswire or some such place like that, or CNN Newswire. CNN has their own newswire service that they use too. So they have this person or people in an office somewhere, however few there are, or how many there are. Well, they come up and analyze all the news stories of the day and decide what they're going to put out there for the public to consume, because that's what it's about: consumerism, right? That's the primary motivator in this world we live in.
Bread and
Materialism,
circuses, as you said.
yeah, it's all bread and circuses. It's all about keeping the people's minds engaged in something that doesn't really matter, first of all. And so that you could kind of vampirize their energy. And that's what they do with us. They vampirize our human energy in different ways. And they keep us entertained, don't they? And that's the whole concept. You could go back to Rome, and all roads always lead to Rome. You could see the bread and circuses model. If you give people enough to eat, give them enough food options, and give them enough entertainment, they won't revolt, right? if they don't want for food, and they don't want for entertainment choices, then there'll always be something engaging their minds other than things that matter, what the policy think tank groups and stuff are doing. They won't think about that or care about that or even know about that. Most people don't. So that's the thing. These government officials and stuff that we elect into positions of power, it's an illusion. they don't really run anything. That's the problem here. They just are the face out there, the public persona that they push out there for a lot of these different ideas. But there's different what you would call what do people call the deep state or the shadow government, that kind of thing. These people, these unelected officials who actually make policy and push forward policy. And many of them don't actually work in governments either. They work in these philanthropic organizations and, these different international organizations like the World Economic Forum. That's one of the major ones right now that's got an awful lot of influence. So they go out there, they put forward these ideas and policies, and they get their people in key places within political cabinets and stuff like that. And then they're able to implement these different ideas across the platform in many different governments around the world. So that's one of the ways that they operate, and they do things in a subtle way, maintain control with this whole air of, staying behind what they call the veil. Right. They keep themselves hidden, the real controllers of this place, the ones that make actual policy and come up with these agendas. They stay hidden. They use their own puppets, so to say. They use these other people as puppets or, that kind of thing to put these ideas out there for people, and they keep their identities hidden from the masses. So that's the thing. There's people that control this place that people aren't looking at because they're just looking at the figurehead up there, and they don't understand that behind the figurehead there's other people making decisions and pushing forward these ideas, and this guy is just their mouthpiece. And that could be said across all of politics and everything else. So that being the case, you could see it creates this it creates this air of plausible deniability too when something does come to fruition that's been put out there in the Hollywood production for years and years. And things like that. It creates this this plausible deniability type of a situation for leaders in this world. Well, that's just ridiculous to think we would plan something like that, right?
Come on, though, like eventual one. Yeah, it's insane. I always liken it to when I watched that movie, The Usual Suspects. You just, or even what was the
Uh-oh, I think I lost my connection. Hello?
And was it a kingpin? And then you have like the Kaiser Soze, who, seemingly is this dumb, unassuming guy and limps and then starts walking away. And you're like, oh, okay. It's like preying on the narcissists who want to be in the spotlight, compromising them, getting them to do what you want. When you don't need them anymore, you chew them up and spit them out, but you're always there. You're always in that central position of power, calling all the shots. And most of the time I feel like we don't even know who they are. And, it's been rumored, like, when the monarchs people got sick of them, they just went into the shadows, became the bankers, became politicians. And a lot of them are actually related, but they're not going to say that. I don't know if that's true or not, but I've just heard so many things about, they just took a different guise, they assumed a different disguise of like, oh, we're just like you, we're people, we just entrepreneurially made it big. Same thing with the technology. Oh, this was discovered in a garage. I mean, that's always the story, is it not? It's like, yeah, they were just toying around in their garage. And yeah, like Mark Zuckerberg, just he single-handedly made Facebook. Yep. It's funny, but I think there's this awakening going on, and I do want to talk about that a little. And because you talk about Pisces, I'm a Pisces, but you're a Pisces, and trying to skip over Aquarius. And I thought that was interesting too, because it seems like we're going backwards then. Like, so we were in Aries, now we're in Pisces, now we're entering an Aquarius, and then we're trying to skip to Capricorn, but that's going backwards on the zodiac. So I had a question for you about that. And then just some of the things I noticed once we unpack that is just, obviously the next not logical evolution of trying to prevent this awakening that I feel is starting to happen, not fast enough for me, but whatever, is to just hijack then the alternative, because that seems to be the strategy they've done. Okay, they've hijacked all the major mainstream corporatized areas of our existence. But now, like you see, in the alternative media is going crazy about Elon Musk, ignoring real, true threats to us, like the World Health Organization becoming the be all end all of dictating, pandemic protocol to the entire world. You don't hear about that anymore. And you just hear about, celebrities impregnating multiple women and Elon Musk buying Twitter. So it just seems like that's the next evolution of where they're going to start seeking to control that alternative media. If they're not censoring it, they're going to infiltrate it to be like, here, kitty, kitty, over here.
Yeah, and I think the argument could be made. They've already done that. They've infiltrated the alternative media. They've infiltrated all these different groups, and exactly the same thing goes with all this occult stuff too. What do you think the New Age movement is all about?
Yeah.
See, that was all infiltrated and socially engineered from the get-go too by these same people. And they teach people false things, okay, even based upon their own occult knowledge. And they admit to lying to their own lower level members in these different secret society groups. That's a known commodity in Freemasonry. Albert Pike, in his seminal volume, Morals and Dogma, came out and pretty much said, members of the fraternity that are under the 30th degree can't know certain things. So we teach them different meanings, and they think they're correct in this meaning, but they're being misled until they're actually led into the grander secrets, the greater mysteries later in their teaching. And this goes across all different secret society groups too, not just the Freemasons. They're the most commonly known one, though. So they're the ones that we could point out and say, okay, well here, if you're familiar with how this all works within these groups, the lower level members are pretty much kept in the dark about things until they hit a certain initiation level. And then they might be let in on some of the more, the deeper secrets, or the more juicy secrets, so to say. So that's how a mechanism of control they have in place for their lower level members too. It's about controlling people. See, so if you can control people in the lower tier and keep them actually grasping at straws for something different, it's kind of like the allegory of dangling a carrot in front of the horse, right? To keep the horse moving forward in the direction you want, and he never actually gets a hold of the carrot. Well, it's the same thing with these secret society groups. The promise of these new secrets, of this new esoteric knowledge, this secret knowledge, and you'll be, so much wiser than the rest, and you'll know all these secrets. They dangle that like a carrot in front of these lower level initiates, and they keep them going down the path they want, in the direction they want. They use it as a method of control for their own members even. And they kind of do this with the public too, right? In many different ways. But that's one of the oldest tricks in the book as far as that goes. And these are some of the real secrets behind the secret societies. How to control people. That's what it's about. That's the big secret at the top, how to control people. That's what they've been doing since time immemorial. And they've gotten very good at it. And they know a lot of different aspects of the natural world, how these things work on a different level than your average person. And I'm talking about the ones at the uppermost echelons of these secret society groups, these occultists that I like to call them the dark occultists that run this place, right? Because they utilize these principles for their own greedy ends, right? They're looking to push forward their own ideas and agendas and their own best interests at the expense of the masses, because they don't believe that the masses deserve to take part in their new age, right? Or in their new world order. They see us as the profane. That's what they call us, okay? If you're not an initiate or a member of their secret orders, if you don't have any of their training and you're not one of them, you are what they call the profane, and you have no place in their new society. So, that's one of the attitudes they have. They view you as being little more than an animal. You're a human resource. And many of them in these esoteric orders, they don't even believe you have a soul unless you're initiated into one of their orders. And they dangle this carrot in front of people there, once again, and keep you yearning after these secrets of what they call, quote unquote, soul science. And they keep you going down that path, right? So that's one of the things that's been manipulated and used here. So they convince people in these secret society groups that are just going along with all of this, that this is the direction they have to go in order to get to that next level secret, right? Or to unlock this certain occult power, like the ability to see in these different types of planes, these different types of psychic sight and stuff like that, to have these different psychic powers and things like that. In order to progress through a lot of these occult teachings, you have to do exactly what the master tells you, right? And that's how they egg people along through this. They always use this promise: if you're just good enough, if you follow the instructions and you really are, you're wholeheartedly seeking this fervently, it'll come to you. But if it doesn't come to you, well, you just weren't pure enough of heart, or that kind of thing. That's what they tell you. So it's all very manipulated within this stuff, and it all plays upon people's egos, right? So they like to mislead people in these different groups in different ways, because it's a system of control. And this is inherent in what they do. And a lot of this is what happens in high levels of power in this world. They like to mislead the public. We're living in the age of deception. I mean, I don't think anybody could dispute that. It's all about deceit. This whole society that's been built in the world today is based upon deceit and death. It's a death cult at the center of all of it. It's what Michael Hoffman calls the reign of dead matter. Okay, and that's what the coming transhumanist idea is all about: the reign of dead matter. Because what they eventually want is for people to believe and accept that they could transfer their consciousness into a machine and live forever in the physical world by doing so. And so what is this? This is a dead entity. It's a dead thing. If you're living, if your consciousness is in a computer, is that really you? Is that your spirit? Is that your soul in there? Or is it just a clever replication of your thought processes? And that's the bottom line here. So they're completely denying the whole spiritual aspect of this at one level, but there are people in the higher echelons of power that know a little something about the spiritual aspects of this. And that's exactly what they're trying to do, is to trap people in this spiritual trap and get them to go along with this, because then they have power over something, right? And
Well, it's
there's
like the
many reasons.
vampire thing you said, Wayne. I mean, I think it's perfect example. I think they want to, because I think to myself, why do they want to kill so many people if they're using us to derive their energy and power? But then it's like, well, it's not that they necessarily want to off us all. They want to just kind of harvest us. So you don't even have to function. It's like the promise they're giving to us is their promise. I'm just speculating, like they're the ones who want to live forever, and they think they can live forever by hooking us up and making us transhuman, because then we don't have to worry about anything then. We're not going to be owning anything. We're not going to be functioning in reality. We're not going to be reproducing. We're just literally going to be like livestock.
Existing, right? I mean, and that's the whole bottom line here. That's the thing. All these new technologies and stuff they put out, and they make all these promises of, oh, this is going to change the medical field and stuff like this. You can live forever. All these different ideas.
Why
That's
would you
not
want
intended
to anyway, though?
Right. Well, that's not intended for you and me. That's not intended for the masses. That's only for the people in the high echelons of power. This small group who see themselves as the elite, as the rightful rulers of this place. And there's many reasons we could either get into or save for another discussion someday as to why they think they have the divine right to rule, and why they've situated themselves in these elevated positions in this world, and why it is they do the things that they do. But at the end of the day, that's the whole notion here. They intend for these transhumanist technologies and stuff for themselves. Okay, it's not for you and me. It's not for the profane, right? They have no place for the profane in their new world. So that's the key here. But they will harvest us and use us, like you said, as a resource. That's why they call us human resources, right? So look at the movie The Matrix. It's a perfect allegory for what they have in mind. They just will utilize your energies or use you for whatever, small petty job or whatever they have in mind for you, and just try to keep you happy and compliant in doing the things they want you to do. And, you know, when it comes down to it, at the end of the day, when they're talking about this transhumanist push where you could transfer your consciousness into a machine, well, like I said, there's a spiritual component here that is totally being disregarded. And there's a reason they're disregarding it, because they don't want you in the public, any of us in the public, to really think of this in those terms, right? Because they want us to think in the materialist term. And that's what has largely been going on in society for the past several thousand years. They're steering us into this hyper-materialist viewpoint where it's all about consumerism. It's all about materialism. It's all about just the five senses, the things that we could sense with our five senses, the physical world we live in. They want to convince you there's nothing more than this. There's nothing beyond this. And that your consciousness is simply the byproduct of the chemical electro reactions of your brainstem. And if that's the case, then your consciousness could be equated down to nothing more than an algorithm, and therefore could be duplicated in a machine. And that's what they're working on right now in these transhumanist circles, because many of them will staunchly believe that all of this is nothing more than the byproduct of some physical thing that happens here in our human body, in our brainstem, right? So if that's the case and they could duplicate that in a machine, then theoretically they could duplicate your consciousness in a machine. But that completely disregards things that are known by those in the occult orders, first of all, and you know, anybody that has any kind of a religious viewpoint, or anybody that considers the spiritual realm of things, or anybody that truly studies what consciousness is. Consciousness is a field. It doesn't exist within the human body per se. It coincides with it, but it extends outside of that. And there have been scientific studies that have shown this, like, you know, in near-death experiences and things of that nature. When you look at this kind of thing, you know, it's something that's well known by those in the occult circles too, that there's many aspects to this reality that reach beyond this physical realm that we're in. But they would want you, the average person, to believe you're nothing more than an animal with a little bit more of a higher intelligence, right? So you're an intelligent animal. You don't have a soul per se. You exist strictly here in the physical, and therefore it's in your best interest to maybe consider uploading your consciousness into a machine so you could live forever. Because otherwise, once you're gone, you're gone, and that's what they try to convince people of. And that's why they push things like atheism so hard. They want people to really think in these terms of this hyper materialist viewpoint, whereas, you know, we're bound in this physical world, and there's nothing more beyond here. So if that's what a lot of these scientists and stuff that are pursuing these technologies believe, then that's what they're working for. Then they have every reason to pursue it, right? And that's by and large one of the control mechanisms they have in place, because there's people above that level that understand more occultic type principles here, and you know, are looking to use that transhumanist singularity for something beyond just what the stated purpose would be here in the material world, or the physical plane, so to say. So what they're trying to do is manifest something here in this place that doesn't truly belong, right? And that's at the bottom line of all of this. It's a spiritual battle that's going on, underlying everything. So, you know, we could speculate and talk about that stuff a little more if you want. I'm actually working on 2 new books right now that are going to hit upon this. So, you know, so it's a field of study I've been looking at.
Never going to leave you alone, Wayne. Don't tell me
That's
that.
okay.
Because we got 2 other books I wanted to interview about too. Well, I would say actually, the atheist thing, yes, that seems to be very intimately linked to intellectuals that are, you know, experts and out in the mainstream. But I would definitely say, and we don't have to go down this rabbit hole, but I'm seeing a push of Satanism. And it's not, I feel like it is moving away from atheism, and it's focusing more on Satanism. And you just see it. I mean, you see it in music, and it's unapologetic now. I mean, there's one school, I can't remember where, they're actually putting a satanic club for kids. Yeah. You're just seeing it in all these events now. CERN, the opening ceremonies was just like so bizarre beyond belief, so satanic. And that's where, you know, they're leveraging those symbols and the occult. But I almost wonder, are they misinformed? Because I'm not so sure, like, even though they know secrets we don't about the nature of reality, that doesn't necessarily mean they know the right thing either, because I'm not so sure. I don't have any proof or evidence. I'm just not so sure that it's that easy, transhumanism. I'm really not that convinced, especially since I feel that, we were created by God. And so I'm just not sure that, and they're very anti that. So how could they really understand how God created us, since they're always looking to thwart that and work against that? So if you don't really know what you're trying to push against, can you really understand the inner workings, and can you really, invert it so easily as I feel they think, they can? But that could take us on a whole nother, thing. But I'm just not so convinced that they're as all, and I'm not saying you're saying this, but, as all knowing as they
Right.
believe they are. Like, yes, you understand a lot of things that you've kept us in the dark about, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's true, or
Right.
all of it's right, or all of it works.
Right. And
So
that's a true statement, what you said there. Just because they claim to know something, right? They claim to know a secret, and they could tell you some, if you actually look in some of this occult philosophy and stuff like that, and how they describe how the spiritual realms and stuff operate and things like that. Well, there's no way we could verify that, right? Neither can they. They don't really know. But what they can do is they could tinker around with different ideas and different things and see what works and what doesn't. And that's by and large what they've done. So they know what works. They may not understand exactly how it all works, but they know that it works. It's like the same thing with the human body, the human immune system. We know that it works. We don't know how. Not exactly. They have some good ideas, and they understand, okay, well, if we do this, this will work, right? Like if you have a severe infection and they give you an antibiotic, you will get better. They don't completely understand the mechanism of how that works, because the big secret here with all that is your body always has all this bacteria in you, and sometimes there's good bacteria, and sometimes that bacteria turns bad, and can cause you harm. But most of the time, when things are operating efficiently and well, there's no problem. But the human body heals itself. I mean, a doctor does not heal somebody. A doctor does not, make somebody better, or medicine doesn't make somebody better. The body heals itself, and they still don't completely understand how that works. Now, they could claim, okay, well, we could see antibodies and white blood cells and all of this stuff. This all combats different bacteria, and they have all these theories of how this works. But at the end of the day, nobody really knows, right? We're miraculously made. We're wonderfully and
but
miraculously made.
is it
Uh,
not true that in our DNA, Yahweh is written in our DNA?
right. I mean, and
I mean,
that's the
that's
thing.
the
It's
answer. That's the
that
answer.
that's the thing. I mean, nobody really knows how this all works, or even how it came to be. Although they could claim that they know this or that, or they've experimented and they found some things that work in certain ways. This is actually a science called cybernetics, by the way, for anybody
Yes, I
interested
wanted
out
to
there.
talk about that too.
It's an important thing to understand. It's something that people should come to grips with, because when you hear the term cybernetics, you're thinking of like robotics and artificial intelligence and machines and things like that. And that's part of it. But cybernetics in and of itself is nothing more than the science of whole systems control,
Mhm.
controlling whole systems.
Like the
The word,
principle, underlying
right.
principle of all the after the aftermath of what things they create too. Yeah. Sorry. Go ahead.
Right. No, that's fine. And that's the thing. Cybernetics is the study of systems control, whole systems control, and they use this basically to control every type of system there is. It's an opposite way of what we're taught to think. We're taught to compartmentalize everything, right? We think in terms of just look at the subjects how they teach us in school. You have like math class, science class, all these different things. They break down individual ideas into these small sections and keep them disjointed from one another. That's not how cybernetics works. It works on the opposite principle. It looks at the whole system. How does this whole system operate efficiently? And what can we do to make a change in this system in an efficient way? Looking at the whole system. So they could learn a little something by using this methodology to look at it. They're not necessarily looking at the constituent parts or components of the system. They're looking at the system as a whole. what's the most effective way we could take control of this system? What's the most effective way we could affect this system in some way? And that's what they do. And they use this methodology across the board for everything. I mean, you could apply this to human biology, you could apply this to economics, and that's largely one that's been done as well. And I would caution people, look a little more into economists, who they are and what they do. It's not just about finance. I'll tell you that much. Economists are by and large some of the biggest social controllers and social engineers in this world. So, when you see somebody mentioning an economist or something, you're thinking, oh, that's a stuffy guy in a tie behind a desk that's sitting there crunching numbers on a calculator and coming up with, financial reports for banks and stuff like that. No, it goes much further than that, what they do. So, but that's a side trail for another day. But at any rate, the point here is that the cybernetics methodology has been used by these people, and it's kind of an inversion of the natural sciences in a way. So when they go back to the old natural sciences, they take some of those ideas and they twist them and manipulate them in a way where they're able to control these systems, right? They could take control of systems using some of these different principles. So a good way to think of cybernetics, a good example I could give, is the concept of what's called homeopathy, right? Like the human body operates in a certain fashion to keep itself in a homeostatic state, a state of balance, right? So a good analogy for that would be like a thermostat. Think of a thermostat. It controls the temperature in a house, right? So if it's too cold in the house, the heat will kick on, and then once the temperature in the room or whatever comes up to that temperature, the furnace shuts off, right? The thermostat controls that. Or air conditioning, like the other way. If it's too warm, air conditioner will kick on and circulate cool air until the temperature cools down enough, and then it'll kick off. This is a cybernetic system. It's a feedback mechanism, right? So it takes an input, analyzes the input, and looks for that homeostatic balance in the system. And then it creates that homeostatic, what it needs to create to go back to that homeostatic balance in the system. And this is how it works. So they could use this principle, this feedback mechanism, to take control of a system too, by introducing an outside input into the system. And this is what's called a causal circuit. It creates a causal circuit. So if they input something new into the system, they could create a chain reaction through the entire system and get a certain output from it. So once they figure out what the output is from the certain input that they put in, well, then they figured out how the feedback loop works, and they could manipulate that feedback loop, right? So in using feedback loops in this way, they could hijack a system and take control of it, in principle here. And that's what they've done with a lot of these different, things that we do in society, right down to human biology and even, sociology, the human brain. They use this in psychology in many ways. They'll input something new in the system, and it's usually some kind of a fear mechanism, right? So by inputting this in the system, they create a reaction within the system, and they could measure the output of that reaction. And once they get an accurate measurement of that output, they'll know how they could tweak or adjust the settings on the fear input they're putting in to get the reaction that they want. So that's kind of how they control human behavior in a way too. It's a cybernetics principle. And I said, you could apply this to any system at all, anything, and it works. And they figured this out, and they don't want people to understand that or think in that way. And that's why they keep our minds fragmented like they do. That's why they teach us, okay, well, you're a specialist in this. Like you go to your doctor, there's a foot doctor, right? That just works with feet. That's one part of the human body. And this is part and parcel of what goes on. It's called compartmentalization, and it happens throughout all of the power structure too.
I think
even
of
within
mind control immediately, because that's the end goal,
Yep.
to compartmentalize your mind, into
Right.
little cones. And
They don't want you to think outside of that one little specialization, right? They don't want you to think in that way. For example, like I said about economists, they want you to think in terms of, okay, and an economist is somebody that just sits and crunches numbers all day and is worried about money. that's part of it, but they do so much more. And that's kind of why they have specializations and stuff like that. They've taught us to go to college, learn a trade, or learn a particular
Gender studies.
right. Yeah, I mean,
Highly
that's one of
lucrative.
them. Yeah, something like that. That's all about creating more confusion.
$200,000 later.
Yep. And what do they do? I mean, what kind of a job do you get with a gender studies degree?
You
I
know
don't
what
know.
you get? The moral high ground, Wayne. That's what
Is that what it is?
it's
Okay.
worth every penny.
The moral high ground. Okay.
The perceived moral high ground.
Yeah, or at least they would have liked to think so, or they'll tell you so that they have the moral high ground.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So,
I'll tell you over and over again that they have
yep.
a high ground. So another thing I wanted, and I brought it up before, was this whole idea of worshiping nature. So like paganism, things like that. Now, and this is just me, when I look to nature, I say when you just let nature do what it's supposed to do, not control it, not, keep it in a habitat, it balances itself out beautifully. Animals just seem to know, like what you're saying about fear. They might have a moment of fear, but then it escalates, and then once it's over, it just slowly dissipates, and it's like nothing ever happened. It was like a lion wasn't chasing me 5 minutes ago trying to literally kill me. So I love animals for that reason, because I feel like you watch an animal and you just learn so much. Like they're in the moment. They say that they've rescued actually a lot of natural habitats by simply just bringing back the animals that were naturally in that environment, and they just bring everything back into balance. But this paganist perspective puts nature over spirituality, I suppose, or looks more into the physical. So I'm curious to know, like, how is that bad? Because I'm not saying I think it's good, but how is that bad? Because to me, nature holds a lot of the keys to the answers of what we're doing all wrong. But yet, like, they seem to be distorting that as an ideology, like of worshiping nature. And I guess, how does that tie into what we're saying about the age of Aries, and then moving in, Pisces, and then moving into?
All right. Well, that's a big question to unpack here. Well, first of all, we can learn an awful lot about nature and about the natural world by observing nature. We could learn a lot about how this place we live in, how it operates. We could learn a lot about God by observing his creation, right? By observing nature. Now, what has happened is in the very earliest ages of man, when man was, a little more in tune with nature than what we are now, he observed many of these things going on and made observations and key points about this, and was able to come up with symbolic ideas and stuff based upon this. And this became misconstrued through the eras and through the generations by people looking backwards in time at this, and coming up with the concept that these people worshiped nature. Well, that wasn't necessarily the case. And this is what we're still taught to this day. And that's not necessarily true. These people didn't necessarily worship nature or the thing that they adopted as a symbol representing some spiritual truth of some sort or something. They didn't really do that, although we're told this is what this old societies and stuff did. And a lot of this ties directly back to what we call the mystery schools of antiquity, because many of these different mythological systems or religions, they adopted some of these ideas. And what they did is they tried to convince the outer courts of the people, the outer members, so to say, of said religion or group. They convinced them that the symbol was actually representative of the thing that they were looking at here, right? So I don't know if I'm explaining this in just the right words here.
Well, what is the symbol? Like, for instance, Pan, maybe we could go.
Well, let's start with something simple people will understand first, because it's said that many of these old cults or religions or mythologies are all based upon the worship of the sun, right? Well, see, that's the thing. Early on, man adopted the sun as the symbol of the unseen God in this place. because it gave us light and warmth and heat, and is everything that generates life here on Earth. They understood this, so they used this as a symbol to represent God. And here's where the misconstruing went on: is that the mystery schools, these were some of the more learned people that learned some of the secrets about how astrology works and things like that. They convinced the masses that what was being done here was all about just the symbol itself, the creation itself. So they had people worshiping aspects of the creation just in the outer circles of this thing. In the inner circles of the religious groups and stuff like that, or the mythological groups, they understood it's a symbol. Okay, it represents a higher idea. But many of the unsophisticated people who couldn't read or write or something like that, they were just, okay with telling them, here's what you do. You go out and you make a sacrifice at such and such a time and stuff like that, just to appease them and to get them to bring tribute to what they would call later the priestcraft, right? So that's what it is. What it's about is you had a small group of people that decided they wanted control and power over others. So they took some of these symbols and represented them to the outer masses of the people as the actual God, per se. So people early on, in the very earliest stages of humanity, they didn't really go outside and think, wow, look at that giant flaming ball in the sky. That's God. We're going to worship that. That's not how they thought, right? They saw it. They observed nature. They were more close to nature than what we are. They watched how all this worked and wondered at the being that made all of this, the creator. And then they, in order to best convey ideas to one another, they adopted symbols for these different things. So the sun represented God in his glory, right? So that's kind of how they communicated these ideas early on. But this was all hijacked by this priestcraft within these mystery schools. They took these ideas and convoluted them and brought them forward to the masses to have them believe this is what you worship, right? This is, the sun is God. This sacred cow out here, this is a type of God. You need to appease and this and that for other things, because they understood some of the natural cycles of how things worked. And your average farmer didn't really truly understand that at that point. Like, they were able to predict eclipses and stuff like this. So they used this kind of knowledge to manipulate people and make them believe they had some special knowledge of God or some special relationship with this God. And they convinced the people, this is the God we worship. It's the sun or whatever. So they use these symbols to manipulate the masses. And that's why, coming forward through history, right, and looking back on this, we see it and we're taught that these ancient cults and stuff, they worshiped the sun and they worshiped animals and they worshiped the creation. And that's not necessarily the case. That wasn't at the initial heart of all of it, right? Most people understood, okay, this is symbolic of something else, but they did what the priestcraft told them because they seemed to have more knowledge of certain things than the average person. So they thought they were more godly, so to say, or more pious, or had a closer relationship with this invisible God. And so the priestcraft manipulated this in people and got them to where they put these different concepts on a pedestal, so to say. So like they would do like this solar worship and stuff like this. And when we look back at the artifacts and stuff, and all the things we find relating to this, well, that's what we're implied to think. These people worship the sun. Look at, they have iconography of the sun all over the place and stuff like that, not understanding the underlying symbols, right? Mm-hmm. So this is what happened. You had this small group that was the priestcraft at that point within these different mystery school places that kind of steered people along these lines and kept the real secrets from them while passing down the esoteric secrets through their different orders or brotherhoods that came forward to become the secret societies through the years. So they kept a lot of this symbology hidden from mankind because it's an archetypal symbology, and they could use it to control people. And they figured that out early on. So that's why they wanted to keep people oblivious as to the true nature of God. So they would tell him the sun in the sky, well, this is God. And if you don't do what we tell you, being the representatives of God, well, we'll make the sun disappear from the sky on such and such a date at such and such a time. And that's when the eclipse would happen, because they learned how to read the sky clock, the stars and stuff very early on. So they used this knowledge against the uneducated masses, and they were impelled to believe what they were told by this priestcraft. And that's how a lot of this stuff came about. So, when we look back on it now, we see, okay, were these people really that dumb? Did they really think that, they were worshiping the sun, that the sun was an actual, being or something that they were trying to appease or something like that? I don't think that's the case. I think people were a lot smarter back then than we give them credit for. But I think they understood just certain things, and thought that this group of authorities, the authority figures, the mystery school class, the priests, the priestcraft, that they knew something more, that they understood something better, and that they should listen to the authority. So this is where all these ideas come from, right?
I mean,
They set
how is that any
themselves up.
different than masks?
It's not. It's the same thing going on today.
Exact same thing.
Same thing going on today. It's just we have a more modern interpretation of these things. But that's exactly what it's all about. So this priestcraft in the beginning that set themselves up with these mystery school teachings throughout all the world, they understood that this is a way that they could have prominence. They could keep some kind of secret information from the masses and use it to control them in some way, shape, or form. And that's what they've done. And they set themselves up as these authority figures. So whatever they said goes, right? So that's how they positioned themselves. And it's been the same group of ruling families throughout all of history, as far back as we could look, with a lot of this stuff, who've done this. And it all ties back to that whole idea. So, I mean, when you look at this concept, okay, it may sound a little ridiculous to us today, but this is absolutely what's been done, and it's still going on. It's still going on.
Taking different shapes and forms, and,
Right.
this order out of chaos thing.
I think we didn't get to the pan part of it, though. We do need to touch on that.
Yeah, so I guess I could say to you then, why, and maybe this will come into play, but why do they want to skip over the age of man? Like, we were in the age of Pisces, which you said was relating to God, I believe, or Christ.
Right. Well,
why do they want, like, we were in Ram, then we were in Christ, now we're entering man. Why do they want to go from man to, what is it, Capricorn? Where
Capricorn.
Again, it's that pan.
Right. Well, here's the thing. It's an archetypal idea. All right. When it comes down to it, if you go back and you look at any of these occult studies, you'll invariably come across something called astrotheology. And this is where a lot of the modern movements like Theosophy claim that most of our religions and religious ideas and stuff came from. Astrotheology, the study of the stars, right? The ancient priestcraft in the mystery schools, they studied the stars. They came up with stories about the stars, the different constellations, things like this. They identified the Zodiac and laid all this stuff out. And they
I love
claim,
that stuff, I have to say. So yeah,
Right.
I'm interested because you have the water, you have air, you have fire, you have earth, and now they're trying to bring us back to earth from what would be air, which is what, more spirituality, I think you had mentioned. Air,
yeah. I mean, these
the
are
spiritual realm.
Yeah, these, like, this is a lot of ideas to unpack in a short session here. So this is something that takes a lot of years of study to really truly comprehend. But when you look at the zodiac signs, there's different types of signs. You have your 4 philosophical basic elements: earth, air, fire, and water, right? Well, these are foundational principles of how metaphysics works in this place, right? Or what we would call metaphysics, what would be more accurately described as either alchemy or as natural sciences. See, these were things that have been understood from as far back as we could go by ancient man and stuff like that. They figured out these different concepts, how this stuff worked in the natural world, right? So they understood on a different level than what we do today, because we're so far removed from nature, these concepts a little better. And they're philosophical concepts. So it's not to say, like, if you apply this physically, it's going to necessarily work how they say or something like that. We're not talking about the physical. So this is where it becomes difficult for some people, because you have to think in a different way. You have to think outside of the box you were taught to think in. So we're talking about a philosophical concept here when we're talking about the 4 elements. There's earth, air, fire, and water. Now, The age of Aries is largely equated with the Hebrew religion, right? So you have Aries, the ram. That's why they worship the golden calf and all of that stuff. And then when Christ came, this became the age of Pisces, and there was this crossover point from what we would consider more of the pagan type religious ideals, the worship of nature, so to say, because that's essentially what they described pagan as, is the worship of nature, which I don't think was necessarily an accurate description, but that's essentially what they've tried to describe it as to us through our modern parlance, our modern lens of history. So you take those pagan ideas where they were, worshiping the creation, the different animals, the ram, which is also the goat, right? So they had that. So yeah, so they had that, and then came the advent of Christ. Okay, and this was the start of the age of Pisces. So we had this crossover from what I would call this nature worship, or the Pan ideal, and there's where the Pan symbol comes in, to Christ, right? The fish. Christ is always represented in symbology by a fish. Ichthys, I think, is, it was a symbol used by the early Christians to identify one another, the fish. So this is a symbol that's taken root as a symbol for Christ.
And adorns many a car bumper.
Yeah, it has. So like, this is an understood concept here. So we have what I named the Pan-Christ dynamic going on, when you have the switch over between ages. Because what happened at the time of Christ, it was the switch over from this natural type worship to something a little bit higher minded, right? A higher type of an ideal, a more spiritual type ideal, shifting from looking at the physical nature of things to the more spiritual side. So we have that crossover point, and we're going through something similar today, but we're going through the inversion of that today, because they're saying we're in the age of Pisces and we're switching to the age of Aquarius, which in the cycle of the Zodiac is next in line. And Aquarius is said to be the age of man, or what is intended to be the fulfillment of these different Christ ideals, right? The full manifestation of humanity living up to its full potential. So that's what we would equate to what they call the Great Awakening, right? That's what's going on. That's what's supposed to be going on through the natural course of time here. Well, what has happened is these dark occultists in places of power here in this world are trying to leverage this archetype, this Pan archetype, once again, to shift things back into the material type phase of things, thinking in the more physical rather than the more spiritual. So that's what they've done. They've taken a hold of this idea, this concept of Pan, and they're using it as an inversion of what's going on now, to replace this Great Awakening idea with what they call the Great Reset, right? And in so doing, what they're doing is they're trying to essentially bypass the energies that are inherent in the Aquarian age and skipping ahead to what the age of Capricorn would be. Capricorn, once again, is the goat. So you see, this is a direct homage back to the Pan ideal, and Capricorn is an earth age, right? Whereas Pisces was a water age, and Aquarius is an air age. So air and fire always represent the spiritual, as far as in the four philosophical elements, and water and earth always represent the physical. So what they're trying to do is they're trying to capture the consciousness of man, right? Or the man's mind, so to say, and keep it bound in the material world, rather than thinking in more spiritual terms and elevating spiritually. So with that being the case, this is what's being leveraged here as an archetype. They're shifting back to that Pan idea, Pan being associated with the goat or the ram. So Pan was the ram back in the age of Aries, and now he's the goat in the age of Capricorn. And we see all the goat symbolism all over the place that they've been telegraphing to us the past few years, haven't we? They're always talking about the goat, the greatest of all time, right? You see that trope going on in society. There's a reason for these things. You mentioned earlier about the thing with CERN, with the Gothard Tunnel opening ceremony there. It was all about goat symbolism, all of it. And it's a very important occult symbol. And it's the inversion of the idea that was in the age of Aries, which was on an elevating type of a trajectory, whereas this is a trajectory going downward now. is where they're trying to take us. Because see, we're in a place in the cycle of time where we should be elevating and thinking of loftier things and moving on, advancing spiritually, but they're trying to trap us in this hyper materialist viewpoint. And that's essentially the energy that they're trying to invoke here. And that's why it's important to think in terms of archetypes as like concepts, right? Because that's what's encapsulated in this pan idea. So they're trying to shift us back to this pan idea. And this pan idea in the modern age is represented a little bit differently than it was back in the previous age there, back in Aries time. Because when you think of Pan, the Greek god, right? Well, he was a man with goat's legs, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, the modern equivalent of that, the inversion of it, yep, that's Pan right there. But the modern equivalent of that, the inversion, is Baphomet, right? He's got the goat's head. It's an inversion. They're inverting the principle. So they're taking the idea of shifting from a lower place to a high place and inverting it from going to a higher place down to a lower place and keeping us bound in the material here. So that's what it's about. It's a different way of thinking about things. And it's something that may be a little, a bridge too far for some people, but it's definitely something these people in these circles of power understand and are utilizing against the masses here. So that being the case, like I said, whether you believe any of this stuff or not, it's immaterial. What you need to understand is there's people in positions of power in this world that very much believe this stuff and are using it in certain ways. And the things they do with it will affect us all. So that's the bottom line with that.
And I just, oh, Wayne, I could talk to you forever, but the Pied Piper, that whole story was just so interesting because it is like luring.
Right.
You know how they lured the rats down to the river and they drowned. I feel like that's kind of what's going on right now. We're being there's a definite attempt to seduce us to just surrender our sovereignty to these people. You're going to be a god. I can't remember the guy's name. He's all over the place. He's everybody's thought leader, like Obama's, because he's an interesting name. But he's, saying how and you touched on this God is dead declaration.
Nietzsche. Yeah.
Yeah. But just like the headline saying God is dead, it's kind of like they're echoing the sentiment now saying, well, we don't need, like, we made our own technological cloud. So, that cloud up in the clouds where God supposedly is, no, he's down here now. We can be gods. We can now,
right.
And this to me is like that Pied Piper, like, come on, it sounds really good, doesn't it? Come on, follow me, and there's people who are biting and there's people who are, I think, just putting their heads in the sand. I think it's mostly though the heads in the sand. So that's good, at least, because if they decide to take it out one day, we stand a chance, but and this consent thing, I just want to bring that back home again too, because a lot of people will say, well, they're so powerful, they have all the money, they have all the, control over everything, but not so, because people like that, if they could do what they wanted to do tomorrow, they would do it. There's no reason why they're not going to hesitate. It's, they're going to do it, but there's a reason why they can't. And it's because we have to allow them to.
Right.
And, I wish more people would understand that, because we've been indoctrinated into this little me.
Right. And that's part of the social engineering. That's part of the social engineering. They want you to believe you're an infinitesimally small piece of dust in a giant cosmic universe, and that it all came about by accident, and you're nothing, you're not special, you have no power, you're a nobody. And that's why, we have these different types of models we're given in society, that we're given ideas like the Big Bang Theory and stuff like that. Well, that just tells you, that there was nothing, and then one day nothing exploded and became everything. And, we're just floating around on this giant space rock, flying around through space at 500,000 miles an hour. And it all came about by accident, and you're not special, you're nothing. That couldn't be further from the truth. That's the whole point. We have a lot more power than they want us to know that we have. They need us far more than we need them.
Yes.
We're the ones that are actually the creative force in this place, right? Your average person is the innovator, the one that comes up with new things, creates new things, actually gets the job done. These people sitting in positions of power, they don't know how to do anything for themselves. They just know how to manipulate others or steal others' ideas and use them, right?
And
So
leverage
that's
them
what's
against
going on.
us.
They need us more than we need them. And they know that if we ever figure that out, they're in big, deep trouble. And that's why they socially engineer us in the way they do and want us to think very little of ourselves and think that we don't have any power to change anything, that they're oh so powerful, they control all this stuff. Well, here's the thing. I mean, look at society around us. Look at all the businesses the past year that have shut their doors because they can't get anybody to work, right? We've seen this, like the people have left the job market in droves. They're gone from it. They decided, and I think this was an unintended side effect of all this stuff that they've done. They didn't think people would figure out if they left, if they locked them in their house and said, you can't go to work, we're shutting down essential business, non-essential businesses and all this stuff. They didn't think people would figure out some other way to get by, right? They figured they would just need to lean on government assistance or something. Well, people began to innovate, didn't they? And they discovered, you know what? I'm tired of being undervalued, working for somebody else, making money for somebody else who doesn't value my time or my commitment. So I'm going to go do something to better my own situation, right? So we've had this happen, and then you have all these businesses that can't fill enough positions. They have all these openings, and nobody will work at them. And we've seen the escalation of, through even prior to the whole pandemic situation, people were crying for $15 an hour minimum wage and stuff like this. Well, now they've got that and then some. These jobs that were paying minimum wage are now offering people $15 plus an hour to work there, and people still won't fill the position. This was an unintended consequence of all of this. People figured out there's a better way to do things. Like, why am I going through this whole corporate structure like this? Why am I falling into this trap? See, because that's the thing. They gave people time to think. I think that was their big mistake here when they did all this, right? People, by and large, okay, they tried using their fear programming to control people. It succeeded to a certain degree, but they drug it out way too long. I think that was their big mistake. They drug it out way too long. And yeah, they got greedy with it. They thought, this is great. We're getting far less pushback than we were expecting with it. So they pushed the envelope further and further and further, and they drug it out too long, and that gave people time to think and evaluate what's going on and understanding there's deception here, right? And figuring out, you know what, I survived through this without my job that I was depending on. I found another way, and I'm actually doing better than I was. Why do I want to go back to that lifestyle of stress and aggravation and work for pitlings while somebody else makes all the money, right? So people figured this out, and they, by and large, stepped away from the job market. So we see, as a result of that, a lot of these businesses wound up closing their doors or, changing around the way they do business to make them more profitable because of this type of a thing, because there's no workforce anymore. I mean, we see that all across the country right now. There's just like, it's decimated the economy to the point where people just, they don't want to work now. Because why do they want to go do that, right? Because they've figured out they could survive anyway, regardless of whether they have that or not. And a lot of this actually goes along with a social engineering trope as well, the whole idea of a universal basic income. But people see
Which
that
Elon
coming.
Musk is in favor of, by the way.
Oh yeah, all these guys are. Why wouldn't they be? I mean, think about it. I mean, here's your stipend. Oh, by the way, if you want to keep us giving you this money every month, you have to listen to what we say. You could only buy X amount of things with it, or you should go get your COVID shot if you want to keep this money coming in. That kind of thing. That'll be coming with it too. And along with that, a digital ID and a social credit score and everything will all be aligned with this whole situation and this whole setup. But that's kind of what they've been engineering in a certain way with people with a lot of these ideas. But people figured out, I don't want to have to go do the 9-to-5 job thing anymore, right? I rather enjoyed having more free time, and I was still able to survive. So I'm going to figure out something else. So that's what a lot of them have done. And many of them have collected unemployment and stuff too. and had no incentive to go back to work either. So this creates a kind of ripple effect through the whole economy, and they know this, and they planned for a portion of it, but I don't think they understood the full implications of what they were doing, how people were going to start to see through it and decide, I don't want to go back to a corporate job like that. I'm going to try and do something different. And the avenues have opened up for creativity in so many ways for people, because they've had this free time now to actually sit and think and pursue the things that they like. So, man being innovative as he is, he'll find a way to make it work. And that's what we've done, by and large. So, it was an unintended consequence, I think, for them that this happened. And now they're just trying to adapt on the fly with all of it. So, I do see the advent of universal basic income rolling out at some point here, though.
Yeah.
That's part of the plan, by and large, because that's one way they can decimate the economy more. So, and that's
exactly.
the whole plan. They want to change up the currency. They want to go all digital with the currency and make it a one world currency. And where have we heard that before?
So scary. Oh my goodness. I mean, well, I don't know, the whole crypto thing to me, I mean, that's a whole nother rabbit hole. I just think that's a Trojan horse. And once again, the alternative media just gloms onto it. And a lot of really smart financial minds just, I don't know if they're in on it or not, but it's just like, oh my God, really? You really think this is the, I mean, if they're going to control all the switches,
right?
Doesn't
That's the
matter how
problem.
much of this stuff that you have, it makes no difference, and also it's so absurd to me. Like, you're paying thousands of dollars for something in the ether. It's no more absurd than the bills we use, the
Right.
notes we use, because it's all perceptual value. There's no inherent value, intrinsic value. It's just perceptual. We all agree that this dollar is valuable. We all agree that this $100 bill is valuable. And that's, that could take us back to the perception
Right.
is reality, which we're hopefully starting to catch on to, that no, the physical world doesn't relay back our reality. Our minds are the ones that, and you touch on that, in your book. It's so absurd. I just can't, with the passports and.
Oh yeah, I mean, and the digital currency is all part of that as well. That's why they've been trying to normalize the idea of cryptocurrency here.
Yeah,
Because
but they're
they
making
do have
this
plans for it.
But it's so funny because it's like the Elon Musk thing,
Right.
It's like crypto versus the bad guys, and it's like, really?
It's an illusion. It's an illusion.
They set up these like polarities, these,
Right.
like good versus bad, and everybody's always trying to find a hack for something, so crypto's the hack, because when
Right.
they pull the switch, but what about our friend Klaus Schwab, who keeps this cryptic prediction about a cyber attack?
Yep. That's not planned or anything. No.
We are really afraid for this cyber attack from Russia or whatever.
Cyber COVIDs.
Yeah, it's like, so what do you think's going to happen then? I feel like that is something, though, they really have to weigh out, because once that happens, it's like we're back to caveman time. It's going to be savagery. Like, if they just crash everything, it's not going to be pretty. It's going to be a very scary world to live in. And I'm trust me, if I could go back in time, because I grew up in a time without all this technology, I would do it in a heartbeat. I mean, it's wonderful. I get to talk to people like you and, get to find people like you in the ether somewhere. But if I could go back, I would in a heartbeat. I would say, let's just roll it back. This never existed, because it's too much of a Pandora's box.
That's the problem with it. It's Pandora's box, and once it's let loose, there's no putting it back in the box. And
no, it's not like you could be like, oh, we'll keep the internet, but we won't have smartphones. Like, no, it would happen. It would be a self-fulfilling prophecy. So, I think, hey, crash it, great, but they have to understand that if you decide to do that, all bets are off. I mean, people will storm the castle. You are not, it's not gonna work out for anybody, because every single thing that you own is now in that interwebs, And if
Right.
it's just shut off and erased, I really don't see that problem, reaction, solution going the way they would like, oh, I lost all my money. Okay, I guess I'll get a digital wallet. No, that's not going to happen.
No.
That's like Bernie Madoff on steroids. It's just not going to happen, if you want to do this globally. So I'm interested, and I'm wondering if this is a whole Oedipal thing. You know what I'm saying? Where if you try to thwart the age of man, are you just going to actually make it happen even more?
Well, if you want my honest opinion, I think these controllers in positions of power in this world are deceiving themselves. It's not going to happen. They're not going to be able to break the cycle of time like they want. They're not going to be able to break the natural order. This place works on natural laws. Our creator made this place, and it operates in, under all these different natural laws in which it does. And man has never truly been able to violate these natural laws. We live by them, and yeah, maybe we do not obey the natural law, but we pay the consequence for that down the road. Like if you look at the way our technologies work, they work in opposition or inversion to the natural world. When you look at, say, something as simple as a combustion engine, it's a destructive device. It's using a destructive force to create power. Whereas if you look at the work of like somebody like a Victor Schauberger, this was actually like a vortex engine he created that used water because he studied water. And this works with the natural environment. It works with natural energies. And it's a creative force rather than a destructive force. So that's what these people in positions of power are all about. They're all about using destructive forces. That's why I say it's a death cult. It is. It's all about death. It's these death ideas, this inversion principle. It underlies everything. See, they're trying to create a new reality inside this one that's a complete inversion of the natural world. They want to be the gods of this place, and the only way they could do that is by creating an inverse system to what's here. And that's what their aim and their goal is. But I could tell you, I fervently believe they're going to fail, because you cannot stave off these natural forces for any length of time without consuming massive amounts of energy because of simple natural principles like entropy, where all things decay over time. So if you set up this type of a control structure, think about that. Like if they talk about setting up these smart cities and these smart city grids and all of this, think about the infrastructure that has to be in place and be constantly maintained. Right? Think about the energy challenges of maintaining a structure like that. Because if you let a building go and walk away for like a year, you'll come back, it'll be overgrown, there'll be vines, there'll be things invariably crumbling away from the building. And this is what nature does. Nature always self-corrects everything. So that being the case, that natural principle, that natural law will still be operating. So in order to keep that natural law at bay, it will require a massive amount of maintenance, and it'll be beyond the scope of what they'll be able to maintain. I see this as they're desperate, right? These people in positions of power, they're desperate for what they want, and they see it as being feasible with the technologies we have today, and they're really pushing for it, and they're going to try. But I think ultimately they're going to fail. And I think they realize that, but they're going for it anyway, because it's their only chance. So, yeah, and they'll try and take as many of us out with this whole thing as they possibly can, just to kind of spit in the face of the creator. Because that's what it's about. They want to become the gods of this place. They want to take the place of the creator. And this invokes back to the archetype of the Tower of Babel story. Because when you look back at that, what happened is King Nimrod, he gathered all the people together, they built a grand city, and they built a tower to reach into the heavens. And his plan was to climb to the top of this tower and slay God and take his place, right? So this is the allegory that's put forward by that tale. Well, what happened in that tale of the Tower of Babel? God destroyed the tower and confused the language, right? So that's what happened. And then everybody scattered again and repopulated the world. So that's what'll happen. We'll come to this Tower of Babel moment. So even if they succeed on some level with the things they have planned with this transhumanist singularity, it'll be very short-lived. I can assure you of that, because they will hit that Tower of Babel moment once again. So what will happen is it'll come crumbling down in a catastrophic way, because this is always what happens in violation of
That's
natural
what
law.
God does.
Yeah, I mean, it's
That's
a
what God
violation of
does.
natural law, and it'll come down in a very real supernatural type way, where this will crumble like catastrophically. The whole system that they build, it'll crumble catastrophically, because
Yeah.
it'll collapse under the weight of its own mass, so to say, because of the natural principles involved. So, that's how judgment will be passed on that. And we could see the allegory of the confused languages and stuff again, too. And this ties back to the etymological idea we opened the show with here, about how words have meaning. And if you look back at the roots of the language and understand the words we say today have very different meanings than what the original word that they're derived from did. And this is utilized in a way by these dark occultists as an archetype or an archetypal idea. So when you see this stuff, you could understand a little better when you get back to the roots of what the words mean and how it's been leveraged against us in that way. It's the same principle, and that falls back on this confusion of languages too.
Yeah. I mean, it's just so interesting. One thing God gave us was free will. And I think in my opinion, just my opinion, the reason why we're now in the situation we're in and everybody's like, why is this happening? Is because essentially we've abdicated that. And the minute, I think that's just the fundamental root of all of this, is when you abdicate your personal sovereignty, the greatest gift you were given, it leads to enslavement. There's no way around it. When you choose to turn your mind off and believe in, sorry, I don't mean to start preaching, but I just think it's so important people understand, because it's very simple. It's not, I think we see it as like, how do we defeat the World Economic Forum? How do we defeat who? How do we, it's like, no, that's not, to me, that's not where the challenge lies. The challenge lies in taking your mind back, because you can sit back and say, they tricked us, they lied to us. No, you put them on the pedestal to put yourself to be vulnerable enough to, and you see this in the Bible, you see this in every age-old story. When you start to believe in false idols, when you start to place your whole sovereignty in their hands, everything falls apart. Inherently, we were given this gift, it's so precious, of free will. And we're just like, I'm going to look at my smartphone and shut everything off. And so, there's God or whatever higher power people believe in. I totally respect that. Tapping you on the shoulder now, saying, okay, now this is getting out of hand. Like, we need to, and then I think that's another traumatic thing. People are so afraid, they're clinging to these traditional institution of powers. Like, well, we can change the schools. We can change. It's like, no, when we get this far, it does have to be like a Sodom and Gomorrah type, you just got to tear the whole, and it's, I'm not happy about that, because that's very traumatic, and where do you go from there? But you just got to rip it, the root out, and start over again.
Right. And I think
that leads.
there's a lot that goes with that whole idea too. I would start by telling people the only mind you can change is your own, right? The best we could do is present information to people and let them make a decision for themselves, because that's the thing. We have this free will principle, this gift that was given to us by God. We're given this free will principle. Now, with this free will principle comes some responsibility as well. And we abdicate our free will and our responsibility to someone else and let them think for us, do the thinking for us, right? And that's part and parcel of what's going on. And we just turn a blind eye and are complacent. That's above my pay grade, right? I'm not going to worry about that. That's what, we hired this guy or elected this guy to go through, right?
Exactly.
So, you abdicate your own personal responsibility. And with that goes a little bit of your freedom and your free will as well when you do that. And that's a principle that's not lost on the occultists that run this place. But when it comes down to it, we as individuals have to step up and take responsibility. And I think that's part of the problem in our society today, is people think that if they just sit back and be quiet, all this too shall pass, and I won't have to ever step up into that position where I have to make this difficult decision or this difficult choice. That's not the case. We're all at some point going to have to come to account for things, And we're going to have to make these hard decisions, each and every one of us individually, right? So it's coming down to that point. There's not going to be any, I'll just sit back and let this whole issue pass us by. And then, eventually when it calms down, everything will be okay. And I will have avoided the conflict and everything with that. That's not the case. That's not what it is. We're in a very real spiritual battle right now. And we all have to make that decision on an individual level, because we're all going to be affected by it on a personal level very soon here.
Yeah.
So there's only so long you could be one of those fence post sitters, right? Trying to sit somewhere between sides on the issue and hope that it just passes you by. It's not going to. It's getting down to brass tacks now. It's to the point where we're all going to have to either stand our ground or crumble to it. And you're going to make that decision. You come to the crossroads. You have to decide which way are you going. There's no more stalling that decision. We're running out of time as far as that goes. So
And they know
that's the important thing here. You're not going to skirt this whole thing, right? And a lot of people seem to think that if they just sit quietly by and let other people worry about it and take care of it, well, this will bypass them. That's not how it works. It's an individual journey, and we all have to face it and go through it. We all have to stand before it and decide what we're going to do with it all. And, when it comes down to the transhumanist ideal, that's coming, whether we want it or not. And we're going to have to make a decision at some point. So, if it comes down to you need to throw away your smartphone, are you going to do it? Like that's the bottom line. I mean, I know they've purposely made them addictive and stuff, purposely to hook you. And a lot of people are to that point, right? A lot of people are to that point where, they are hooked on it and they don't want to give it up. It's become such an intricate part of their life, all these different technologies. And that's what they're depending on to get people on the hook with all of this.
Yep.
But it's going to come down to a spiritual decision. Are you going to step away from it because something's not right with it? Or are you just going to go along with it and hope that it all passes you by, all the bad things that come along with it, or the consequences of it will pass you by? So we see that going on in society today. I think that's the majority of the problem, is people are, they realize they've been complacent and they've been indifferent, and they really sincerely hope that the whole thing's just going to pass them by. This too shall pass. And, if I just sit quietly back and watch and wait, well, somebody will save me, right? Or somebody will switch this and make things better. And that's not the case. We need to step up and understand, take our sovereignty back. And with that, our responsibility, because it comes down to individual choice, things we can do. And it comes down to, what are you going to do in your own life to make a difference, right? Or
don't do it. Sometimes it's very simple. Just say no. You don't have to.
Right. You don't have to. Yeah.
Just say no. I respect myself too much to put a mask on, to social distance, to put something in my body that I don't feel comfortable with putting in my body,
Right.
To compromise my own values, whatever those values may be, because they differ to everybody. One other thing I just want to add about the individual aspect, we're all connected. And that's another, I feel like there's this cognitive dissonance, like, oh, well, that's just Shanghai. Like, that's happening in Shanghai, but that's not happening here.
That'll never happen here.
Yeah,
right?
Which I am in Florida, but it's like, well, I'm in Florida, so I don't have to no, you do have to worry about that. And that's something that we've disconnected from. Almost 100% of the things we consume that we don't even need anywhere, but that's another story, come from a place where they treat people like, I'm not saying we're so much better, but it's open that they just treat people so horrifically. And we just completely oh, that's okay. It's cheap. Hey, that's cheaper than going to the local guy, and that's just an example, but I'm just saying, I'm not trying to push that particular agenda. I'm saying, understand, if it happens to another living being, animals too, because we're becoming like that. It can happen to you. The more we tolerate, the less our resistance is to immoral things that are happening on a grand scale for profit or power or whatever. It's going to come around to you eventually too. So we are connected. We can no longer have the luxury of saying, well, that's just them. But we have a constitution. So, We can't do that anymore. We do have an individual responsibility to ourselves and to protect our sovereignty, but we also have a responsibility to say, hey, that's not happening to me, but that shouldn't be happening to anybody. What's going on there, And we
Right.
don't do that either, We're just like, well, it's not me, so it's all good, I guess. And then that's kind of like what goes along with exactly what you're saying about burying your head in the sand and just, well, whatever. That's his kid. That's not my kid, or whatever the case, because we're so connected. It's insane to think that where injustices in one area of the world are happening, that it won't ripple out. The acceptance of it in general is what feeds it and makes it more powerful and gives
Precisely.
it the ability to ripple out to the rest of us.
Right. The more that people accept it as a normal thing, or something that happens
For them, for
Right.
others. It's not normal
Right.
for us, but it's okay for that. Like, no,
Right.
it's not
Eventually
okay
it's
for
coming here.
anybody.
That's the
Exactly.
problem. And people
And
don't
that's-
seem to realize that. By the time they realize that, it's too late.
It's like,
Right.
wait a minute, whoa, but it's happening to us? Yeah, I mean,
Mhm.
it's just, I really hope we realize that, because I only bring that into play because I feel like that is so much encompasses the spiritual aspect that we have been sorely deprived of understanding, our interconnectedness, how we're just different points of attention, but we're all connected, on the same way. And that goes for animals, for nature, for humans. It's all there. So it's so important.
Absolutely.
Sorry,
And
I'll get off my
that's
pulpit now, but I just want to give some optimism, because we've talked about a lot of things and I know it can be very scary, but I also know that, this could all bring about a great opportunity for a lot of really wonderful changes, tearing down these paradigms, these structures of power, and, allowing us to really live our potential of who we, our God-given potential of who we really should be, or
Right.
meant to be.
I agree. And the more self-sufficient you are, the better position you'll be in if things do actually go south. So if you learn how to grow some vegetables in a garden, can some food, keep some storable foods, keep storable supplies, maybe hook up a solar generator to your house, these kind of things, just basic survival skills, things like that. Learn how to hunt, how to fish, understand how to chop firewood and stuff like that. Know how to do this stuff, just basic things that we take for granted today that our ancestors had to do on the daily just to survive. If you understand how to survive and have some preparations in place to survive, if things do go south, you'll be in a much better place. And also, the things that are planned by these elites in the power circles here today, they can potentially bring about some good things for us if we take the right course of action with it on an individual level. We could make something better for ourselves. And what it comes down to is excuse me, you could reject their system that they're giving you, right? That they want to give you and push on you. You could say no, right? You could walk away. I mean, that's your sovereign right as a human being. As a human being, you could say no, I don't want to consent to that. And if you remove your consent from their system will fall. It
The
can't stand.
pyramid,
The whole house of cards comes crumbling down if enough of us
bottom
step back and
comes
say
out.
nope, we're not doing that.
And it's so
And
simple.
it is simple.
We have
You
the
just have to say
numbers.
no. You just have to say no. Have the courage to stand up and say no, and maybe be a little bit unpopular with who you think the quote unquote influencers are in society. Because I could tell you right now, the things you see on television, the worldview they're trying to present to you on television and on the internet, it's not true. Go out in your own community and talk to people. Look around. You'll find it's totally different than what's being presented to you, what popular consensus is on everything. So that being the case, have the courage to stand up and say, no, not for me. I'm not doing that. And stand on your convictions and stand tall on your convictions. And, that, like I said, their whole house of cards will crumble if you reject that system that they're trying to give you and remove your consent from it. Then it'll crumble and they won't be able to do anything about it. Right. And this all starts with grassroots and small communities and stuff like that.
Which they've tried to destroy and undermine.
They have tried to
so
destroy.
long.
Most people don't even know who their neighbors are anymore. If you know who your neighbors are and your neighbor has a certain skill set that you don't, and make some compromises with them or something if it comes down to it. Like I'll trade you my strawberries for your bananas or whatever, you know what I mean? And work together. I mean, this is how society has survived for millennia, right? We don't need all of this fancy technology in order to survive, and all these financial systems and
Right.
all of these systems that have been put in place, right? We don't need all of this infrastructure. We could survive just fine within our communities. Communities have been doing it from time immemorial, right? Small communities. That's what
We
it's
can
about.
thrive,
That's where it
not
has
just
to start to
survive.
get things back.
Yeah, we don't need all this synthetic illusion of everything's better. We've never been sicker. We've never been
Right.
more depressed. We've never been more, I think, just oppressed. We don't know who we are anymore. We don't know what we want. Even if we were free, we'd be like, well, I don't know what I want to do because I've just been told all my life I'm this cog in a wheel. And,
Right.
so is this stuff really better? No, it's just marketing, like you said, and everything's being pushed to tell us it's better. So we're like, well, okay, I guess it's better then. I got a lot more stuff and
Yeah, I
I
need
got a
the
lot of debt and I got a lot of bills and I guess it's better. But
yeah,
it's
but I got this
not.
big house and this new car and all of this stuff that doesn't matter at the end of the day if society collapses, right? As long as you have a roof
Yeah.
over your head and enough food and some love, you got more than the average person then, right? If you could survive and take care of yourself without somebody having to give you a handout. See, that's the thing. I mean, uh, if you set yourself in a position where you could be self-sufficient, the more self-sufficient you are, the less they are able to control you.
Mm.
And that is why they try to hook us into these systems. They hook us on the technologies. They hook us on, okay, well, here's the bank account. And if you want groceries, you go to the grocery store. You daresn't grow your own food, and that kind of thing, and learn how to do all this stuff and farm your own land and stuff like that. They want you to not have the first clue about how that whole supply chain works,
Or
right?
not even
They
know what food is.
right.
Wayne, I mean, we don't even know what food is anymore.
No,
99% of what's in the store is not food. It's food-like substances.
it's synthetic,
I
right?
mean,
It's a lot of ingredients and chemicals. That's about it. It's
it's
sad, and
just
that's why we're sick like
insane.
we are.
But we're like, oh, but it's us. We're inherently dirty and bad. And this is our birthright. And I'll just tie it back in because you brought up Joseph Campbell, that story about the lion being raised around sheep. And then our tiger, and the lion or tiger comes along and says, what are you doing with all these sheep? We eat sheep. We don't sleep with them. And look in the water, look at your reflection. You're a lion, you're a tiger, you're whatever. Be who you were meant to be, not some meeker creature because you were told you were a sheep and you never actually saw yourself. All right, I'm getting
Right.
crazy now, but you know what I mean? Like, I
No, I
remember
know
that was a
exactly what you mean.
story that he had told, and we both actually, funny enough, we both have lions there. But it's like we just don't understand even who we are. And the more we can do for ourselves, it's not even about defeating the overlords or the powerful people or globalists. It's just about like winning back ourselves or
Right.
who we are. We just need to, I just like to dumb things down, because when we make it like a battle, we become like the person we're fighting. You see that happen so often. You take on somebody and you become just like them in order to try to defeat them.
Right.
I guess
I get
Star
what you're
Wars
coming
too.
from.
Yeah, because
Yeah, I
in
see
his
where you're coming
face,
from.
when we defeated Darth Vader, he pulled off the mask and it was him.
Yeah. It's like precisely. I mean, that's the way it is. I mean, it is an individual spiritual battle for each of us. But at the end of the day, like I said, the only mind you can change is your own. So change the way you behave, change the way you do things, and better prepare yourself for being more self-sufficient and being less dependent upon the system, so to say. And if we could all do that, then the system will eventually crumble, or they will have to revamp their system to make it something that's desirable for people. Because if people aren't indebted to the system or dependent upon the system, then they have no need of the system. And if they have no need of the system, they may not want to use the system if the system presents a lot of bad choices to them, which it does at this point, right? In order to go along, to get along, you have to follow certain ways of doing things in this society, and it's all corrupt. I mean, look at it, like government levels on down, it's corrupt. The way businesses operate anymore, it's corrupt. It's all about the bottom line, the dollar. There's no human factor anymore. It's not like the old days. If there was a, Mr. Jones owned the general store, you went down there, you were short a little bit of cash, didn't have enough. Okay, well, here, take this home. When you get it, pay me. There's none of that anymore. Now it's like, sorry, get out of here, pal. You don't have enough to pay for it, because it's a major corporation. It's all corporation. It's all that running the system. Corporation derived from the word corpse. It's a dead entity. See, do you understand why I say it's a death cult? Like the whole thing here. It's a dead entity. It's the reign of dead matter, as Michael Hoffman calls it. And that's exactly what we're being programmed to accept and to step into. But we could step away and say, no, we don't want that for ourselves or our families. We'll learn to do some things for ourselves and be a little bit more self-sufficient. And no, thank you. We decline your offer. And that's what it comes down to. Everything's an offer, right? So it's an offer. No, we decline your offer. That's that. And they can't force it on you as much as they want to claim they could force different behaviors and stuff on you. At the end of the day, they can't. It's the free will principle. It's a natural law in this place. If they violate that, they're going to have karmic retribution for it, and they know it. And those that are stupid enough to not know that and try to force something anyway will learn the hard way, won't they? So, anybody that's an employer out there that says, if you want to remain employed here, you have to go get this COVID shot. They're going to learn the hard way.
In there, yeah. They're
going to learn the hard way, aren't they? Because they cannot force you to do something you do not want to do. That's the real secret here. That comes down to sovereignty and free will. And we all have that choice, and it's a natural law. It's a natural principle. And that's why they do everything they can to try to coerce or trick you into consenting to things that you don't want to, because then they could kind of skirt around that karmic principle. But if you outright refuse and are steadfast and stand behind your decision and your principles, they have no choice but to let you go and do what you want to do. And sometimes it's a tough choice for people to make, because they do their very best to make it as difficult for you as possible, or as painful as possible, to decline something like that. But in the end, they will be the ones that will suffer the karmic consequences for that action. So all you can do is step away and say, you know what? No, I'm not going to participate. Thank you for the offer, but no. And there's really nothing more they could do to you about that. It's just a matter of, how are they going to be able to live with themselves pushing something like, and here's the thing. I like to use this whole vaccine as the case study for this, because we see all kinds of harmful ramifications from these vaccines happening right now already. And I think they're only going to get worse through the next couple of years. So if you were a manager somewhere or something, and were forcing your employees to take this, and they become really sick and perhaps die or something, are you going to be able to live with yourself if you find out that that's the reason, that was the cause of that? So, I mean, this karmic thing comes into play at some point with all of that. So we need to make a decision on our own and decide, either yes or no, I'm not going to consent to that. So, if you really try to coerce somebody in this way, like a lot of places have, it has bad karmic retribution for you. Let's put it that way, because it's disingenuous, right? It's not, there's no true consent being done per se when you're threatening somebody's livelihood. Like, if you don't do this, you're not going to have a job. Well, that's enough for some people to say, okay, to reluctantly say, okay, I'll do it. Because they have no choice there, or they feel they have no choice. But that's not true informed consent, is it? And that's where in the distinction is. That's forcing your hand. It's forcing, your own power or your own will on somebody. And the term will is a very loaded occult word in a lot of senses here, but that's exactly what's being done. But anyway, I think
And
we've
for,
spoke enough about
yeah,
the
I mean, and
vaccine
for
side of
those
things.
who are trying to take it to escape some fate that they're being told will be, reckon upon them, I still think, like, read a story like Oedipus. It's always that way. You try to avoid something and you're told this is the magic solution to doing it. It's in all the stories. It's in Game of Thrones. It's in, every time you try to, you're told something's bad's going to happen, so you better do this. And you you just base your whole life around that avoidance of that one thing. It usually becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. So that's another side of it too. It's like, for the people who are just so dead set on, I'm not getting this, I'm not dying of it. It's like, you're not trusting in just the natural flow of existing. You're just not, you're resisting, you're fighting against it. And I think resistance is a very important thing, which is what this cult is essentially doing. They're resisting, like you said, the natural order of things. When you do that, it has an adverse effect. It never has the effect you intended for it to have. So this resistance, this abdicating our free will and our minds and any sense of personal responsibility always seems to have the opposite effect of what it's intended to.
Right. And that's the bottom line here. Whenever somebody's trying to coerce you to do something, that should give you the feeling, first of all, why do I need to be coerced to do this? Like,
it's so great.
When you think on the simple level like that, if this is such a good thing, why are they having such pushback with it? You know what I mean? Why is it such a problem? Why are they pushing it so hard? If it's something that's good, right? People should want it and will line up to get it if it really works and it's really good, right?
You have to have a sense of humor about it, because they're like,
You
oh,
do.
we have a lottery, and oh, look, like some celebrity, we're going to put it on TV. Like, even Biden said himself, why am I doing this on TV? I think he got his booster. It's just so funny. Like, look, whoever, Jay-Z, or I'm making this up, but got it, and we're going to televise it, and or we'll give you free fries, or we'll, it's just kind of like, like, are you okay? Like, what the hell's wrong with you? It's just kind of, I have to.
It's over the top. Let's put it that way. Yeah, it's over the top. It
and
really
they think
is.
they're being subtle, and it's kind of funny, because if I don't laugh, I'll cry.
Yeah, I mean, it's sad that a lot of people have bought into the narrative the way they have, but it is what it is, and the best we could do is maybe speak out about it and let people know, hey, this isn't exactly what you think it is, right? And point out the inconsistencies and stuff like that. And I like to go to
the tricks of the trade too,
Uh-huh.
how they're accomplishing this and how they're hijacking your mind.
Right. And that's an important thing to understand. That's why I do the things I do. I want people to understand, first of all, what is it that these people that are pushing this believe, and what methods are they using? Because if you could understand those two things, then you're better equipped to fight back against it. And that's the bottom line here, because nobody likes to be manipulated, right? And that's what's been going on. And we've been manipulated to a massive degree through the decades here. And we see just the past 2 years how they've rolled this all out into this massive social engineering campaign. So, we've been steered in 2 years in ways that it would take decades prior to the rollout of this whole thing to do. So, we've come to accept things as the new normal today that we shouldn't, right? And this all happened in a very short amount of time. If you go back to 2019 and tell people, hey, you know what, next year you're going to lock yourself in your house for 3 months or something and wear a mask everywhere you go, they would think you're crazy.
Yeah.
Think about that.
You can't do that. Nobody would.
Yeah.
Nobody would do that.
Yeah. The world's going to shut down for 2 weeks.
Oh, and you're going to police yourselves too.
Yeah.
You're actually going to police your neighbors, and they won't even have to enforce it. You'll enforce it upon each other.
Yeah. And then, the further question would be, well, why would I do that? Because somebody had a cold. Think about the absurdity of that when it comes down to it. Or because somebody got the flu.
It's fighting the natural order again.
Yeah.
We need sickness. Sickness gets out all this. That's why when stuff comes out of your nose and it's gross, but you need that because your body is protecting you against outside things that don't need to be inside of you. it's just the way, it's the cycle of life. There's a little bit of pain to get to the pleasure, you know, everything has to kind of cycle out. And
Right.
we're kind of like not accepting that anymore. It's like, no, common cold, can't have that. Then you're defective. There's something wrong with you. We have to quarantine you. We have to put you in a camp, you know, and that's just not, it's
Right.
not how we're built.
And once again, there's this subtle archetype being played there too. It's this artificial type of wiping out of illness, so to say. That's the promise of the transhumanist future. See, we'll be able to, you know, eliminate all disease and even aging and death by doing this transhumanist singularity. That's what they're subtly queuing up, right? It's an artificial response to a natural thing. It's an artificial substitute, right? It's a synthetic version of something that is a spiritual promise for us, right? Because we're told, I mean, if you follow any type of theology, or if you follow the Christian religion, we know one day there'll be no more disease, no more death, no more tears, no more illness, nothing of that sort. It's a spiritual promise, and it's a promise of God, and that's the natural version of this, and that's the real thing, right? This is an artificial substitute for that. This is what you would call the spirit of Antichrist at work, right? It's an alternative Christ. See, that's what they're offering here. The system is an alternative to that. And that's exactly what they're looking for. They're trying to create that in the physical world here. And it's not going to work for them the way they promise, but it's how they get people on the hook. And that's how they're trying to manipulate and steer people towards this idea. Because I'm telling you, at some point, this whole transhumanist ideology is going to be introduced as the cure-all of all of mankind's problems, isn't it? It'll heal all health problems. You won't have any sickness or illness anymore. We'll defeat death. We'll be able to defeat aging. You'll be able to, transfer your consciousness into any type of a vessel that you want at any time. It'll be an ultimate freedom. You'll have all this cognitive intelligence. You'll be able to access all the information of the world at will in your mind, and all of people's collective experiences. You see how it all cycles together. It's a promise that is a cheap knockoff of what's in store for us in the spiritual, that God has planned for us. It's a cheap knockoff of the creation, of the natural creation. That's what they're trying to simulate, and that's what it is. It's a simulation, right? Because and this is one of my firm beliefs, I don't believe if they're able to actually say, quote unquote, transfer somebody's consciousness into a machine, I don't think that's an actual soul or spirit in there. It's just a replica. It's a convincing machine. So that's about it.
And every time you try to manipulate or change something, that's when the sickness arises. All this technology has caused so much sickness. All these jabs of all kinds have caused all the sickness. So the antidote always seems to be actually the root cause when you're trying to manipulate what's already naturally existing on its own. It's the root cause of all the pain and suffering and how do we get peace? We go to war.
Yeah, that doesn't make sense.
Like we always want that magic pill, but it's already there. Peace is just be peaceful. That's peace. You don't need war to get to peace. So, it's just we stop trying to put something on something else to prevent something. It probably would be just fine the way it is. But when you try to always manipulate and cajole, that's actually what creates all the problems. So it's bananas. But I do want to preserve your time. You've given so much, and I thank you so much for your generosity. I did also notice that Amazon says this came out February 21st. Wayne, what's up with that?
Well, it's actually the hardcover version.
22nd. Oh, okay.
Yeah, the hardcover version came out the 22nd.
Okay. All right. I didn't see that. I was looking because I did see your interview about the numerology aspect of it. So.
See, here's the thing with Amazon. Sometimes if you submit your manuscript and stuff like that and have all your T's and your T's crossed and your I's dotted and stuff, and you submit it, sometimes it takes them a couple days to approve it. So I made sure I set it up and stuff a day early in case it took them a little bit of time to approve, but they approved it like within just a couple hours, which is not the
Mm.
normal there.
Yep.
So I also had, like I said, I had planned the hardcover. So I did the hardcover the next day and got that one for the
Ah,
22nd as well, because once
awesome.
again, it comes down to they always like to play the games with the numbers. So I figured this is something they use, an archetype they use against the masses. I'll flip the script and
Yeah,
I'll use that on them this
literally.
time. And yeah, so even though it looks like that, that tried to be prevented, it's still at one version of the book came out on the 22nd. So that's
Awesome.
the hardcover one was
Okay,
published the 22nd.
awesome. I didn't see that for some reason, but that's awesome. Okay, so just two more things and I'm gonna let you go, but I really hope you'll come back on
Oh, certainly, anytime.
because I hope you're not like, oh God, I can never get off with this person. I know, it runs long, but I just feel like if it goes there, it goes there. But I would love to talk about your other two books, which I've read. Not at the same time, but if you
Right.
down the line, if you come back on, I think this stuff is so important too.
Oh, it is.
Definitely, guys, if you get this book, The Demic of Pan, it's a great book and it's chock full of really useful information to arm your mind with. Can you just tell us what you have coming up? And you've kind of alluded to that, two more books, and how people can find you.
All right. Well, basically, if you put my name in the search browser, my books should come up. They're available on Amazon or pretty much anywhere else you buy books right now. I'm available on, you could book on Rockfin, ROKFIN.com/Wayne McCroy. And my channel there is called Alchemical Tech Revolution. I also produce the podcast, Alchemical Tech Revolution, that's available on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Every Wednesday night at 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, my good friend Jason Lingren and I do a live stream on his Secrets of Saturn Rockfin channel as well. People can check me out there. And I'm also a frequent guest and contributor on Crow 777 Radio. That's CRROW777radio.com. Those are pretty much all the places I could be found at this point. And you can just type in the search engine, the name of the book, it should come up too. All of them are available through Amazon. I have 4 of them available right now. I am working on a 5th book and have the research and the notes put together for a 6th book that I plan on trying to get out here pretty quickly too. So I'm hoping to have the 5th book out by the end of the year. We'll see how that all comes together. It's one of those things. It's hard to a lot of times compile these things, but that one is going to be an interesting one as well. Well, both of them will be interesting. So I have a working title and I haven't completely authenticated yet with it, but I could give you that if you'd like to hear it.
Of course.
This one is called Autism, AI, and the Singularity. That's the
Mm.
title of that book. So, and the subtitle is Digitizing Human Consciousness. So that's the one I'm working on currently. I should have that out. That's kind of a carryover from my 2nd book, The Autism Epidemic, Transhumanism's Dirty Little Secret. That's a continuation of that work. So it should be an interesting one. I get into a bit more details as to about how this whole transhumanist thing does apply most definitely to autism and various of these other disorders that are going on with people. And I can show documentation of how this is, has been planned and has been thought about and talked about and how it relates, because a lot of people seem to think that, maybe it's a step too far or a bridge too far for some people to speak in those terms. But I assure you, there's definitely something to it. I've looked very deeply into it because it's a subject that affects me on a very personal level. So, it's something I've explored very deeply, and I'm looking forward to getting that one out too.
Yeah, and I just read this very recently, and coincidentally, you had said they changed it from Autism Awareness Month to Autism Acceptance, and I was on LinkedIn recently, and all of a sudden I'm seeing all because now it's become Facebook, LinkedIn, some way somehow, all these different initiatives and people showing their corporate push for, and it said autism acceptance.
Right.
And I never thought about that. I was like, oh my God. And also I'm originally from New Jersey, where I believe now it's 1 in 4 or something.
It's very
like
high.
astronomical of anywhere, I think, right? I think New Jersey has the most autism. Yeah, and something else I wanted to I want to touch on later on, not today, obviously, because you have family and you have a life to get back to, but just why they're targeting males. It just seems to be throughout every kind of just all this occult, everything.
It is, yeah.
I'm so curious to understand why that is, and with autism in particular as well. But yeah, and I know you have one or three, children.
I have
with
6
autism.
kids total. I have
Yeah, but I
three
mean,
three with autism.
3 with autism. That's what I
Yeah.
thought I'd read. Yeah. So, and I have a couple friends with children with autism. So, yeah, it's a very interesting, and I definitely want to explore that with you. So if you come on again, I would be eternally grateful for that. And I
Yeah,
am
sure. We
eternally
should set that
grateful.
up sometime soon.
Yeah, and thank you so much, Wayne. I mean, we could talk for hours, because your books are, they're very easy reads, I want to say, but you can unpack them for days, which I love that kind of thing. It's just, it's a very rare quality to come upon when you talk about, authors and information of this sort. So thank you so much for sharing all that, for, being that light, shining your light out into the world and sharing this information, and not hoarding it like some people do, the important information and secrets that we need to know. And thank you for coming on. Thank you so much. This has been so great. So thank you.
Well, thank you for having me on. I always enjoy going on new platforms and stuff and reaching new minds out there, because that's what it's about. Thank you so much for doing the things you do too.
Yes. Well, it's all you guys. I owe it's all my guests. So you guys really are the show. So thank you again. I can't say it enough. Have a great night. I will be in touch to bother you again, to have you on to talk about other things, because we've only just begun. And yeah, we'll be in touch. I'll put all your information in the notes, and I'll send you links. So
Okay, sounds good. Thank you
okay.
so much.
Thank you, Wayne. Have a great night.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.